The Surface Laptop 3 was great, but as I mentioned in my review, it's getting a little old after a couple of years, and unfortunately, Microsoft didn't change the formula at all with the Surface Laptop 4. We were really hoping for something new, and that's why the Surface Laptop Go was so exciting. Now, I did say in my review that unfortunately the performance wasn't there on the base model, but after some upgrades, I actually got it to the point where I absolutely loved it. And now, I'm wondering, what would make me choose the Surface Laptop 3 over the Surface Laptop Go? So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. This is InnoISO, and this is the Surface Laptop Go versus the Surface Laptop 3. In this video, I'll also talk about the Surface Laptop 4 and whether it's a significant upgrade, and whether that would change the formula, but we'll get to that in the end. Oh, and before we get started, if you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. And if you like this video or any other videos that you see on my channel, please just like and subscribe because it makes a huge difference for me. Keep on watching. Let's start off with the performance. It was a big deal when Microsoft released the Surface Laptop Go's base model with Core i5 10th generation processor. That is a huge step up from the Pentium models that we've seen in Surface Go's and even the entry-level Core M3s that we're used to in Surface Pros. And it's the exact same processor that starts in the Surface Laptop 3. Unfortunately, the base model of the Surface Laptop Go only comes with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of eMMC storage, which is incredibly slow. Now, thankfully, you can upgrade it, as I showed in this video, but we'll get to that later. Let's instead look at the next tier up Surface Laptop Go with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. That is the most head-to-head comparison between these two devices, that model and the base model Surface Laptop 3. And on that model, you're paying an additional $150 at $799 for the Surface Laptop 3. Now with the Surface Laptop 3, you can also upgrade to the i7 10th generation processor, where the i7 isn't an option on the Surface Laptop Go model. But let's start off on those lower end i5 models just to have a direct comparison. Let's go through what additional things that you get for that extra $150. The Surface Laptop Go has a 12.5 inch, less than 1080p display that is touch and glossy. I actually really like this display, despite the fact that it is significantly lower resolution than most of the displays that we're used to. I don't actually mind that at all. I've never noticed the display being too low resolution for me to even tell. Unless I get relatively close to the laptop, it actually looks perfectly high resolution. The Surface Laptop 3, on the other hand, has a little bit higher resolution than 1440p and also has a tall 3x2 display, but it's 13.5 rather than the 12.5 inches of the Surface Laptop Go. I didn't really notice a huge difference in using these two devices in terms of the screen size. Obviously, the additional inch sometimes helps, but not really to the extent that you might think. Now let's talk about the keyboard and the trackpad. The keyboard on the Surface Laptop 3 is substantially larger, higher quality, and generally has better switches in that it feels nicer to type on than the Surface Laptop Go's more plasticky, squishy feel. I prefer the older Alcantara keyboards to both of these, but in both cases, I don't mind typing on them for really long periods of time. If I had my choice, I would go with the Surface Laptop 3 instead, but it doesn't matter, and I'm really impressed with what Microsoft did with the quite small, quite compact Surface Laptop Go's keyboard. The trackpad on the Surface Laptop 3 is significantly larger, and it also uses a more glossy glass finish, whereas I can't tell whether the Surface Laptop Go's trackpad is plastic or glass. Even if it is glass, it feels a little bit plasticky, but I don't really notice that in daily use. I like it, but it's not quite as premium feeling without as much of a resonating click as the Surface Laptop 3's trackpad. Both of these devices sport a single USB-A port, which is great for those of us who don't love dongles, a single USB-C port that allows for charging, and the Surface Connect port. It is the exact same port layout, which is excellent. The design of both these laptops is incredibly premium and very, very impressive. Now, obviously that's more impressive with a lower price Surface Laptop Go, but it's got a slightly worse design. Worse depending on how you feel. The bottom panel is actually made out of plastic rather than metal, which means that it's slightly less premium feeling than its bigger brother, the Surface Laptop 3, which is all metal. And unfortunately, the color options are a little bit different, with a little bit more rich color options coming in the Surface Laptop 3. Just to make a quick comparison at the relative sizes of these two devices, let me just pick this up. It is night and day. There's an extra probably inch on the side here, and maybe another additional, I'd say half an inch to 3/4 of an inch on the bottom. It's tough to see, but I'll run it in B-roll. That is incredible. It is awesome how small this is, despite having largely the same internals that this does. The additional chassis size and probably larger fan of the Surface Laptop 3 will probably contribute to better cooling performance and therefore better performance, but I didn't really notice this in day-to-day use. Interestingly enough, despite the fact that the Surface Laptop 3 has the more premium design here, the larger bezels actually leads to a substantially larger footprint, even more so than you'd expect from the additional inch of screen real estate. This is one of my biggest issues with the Surface Laptop 3, not necessarily the fact that it is a larger footprint, but how much extra space is taken up by those bezels. And I really wish the Surface Laptop 4 used the same microscopic bezels that we got on the Surface Laptop Go. Maybe not microscopic, but definitely smaller. But that actually leads us to the last difference that I want to talk about: the presence or lack of Windows Hello. The base model of Surface Laptop Go does not have Windows Hello login at all. You're basically forced to just use a PIN or password like the old days. But the one tier stepped up model, 8 gigs, 128 gigs of RAM, actually has a fingerprint sensor baked into the power button that works pretty well. But of course, you're giving up the opportunity to have Windows Hello facial recognition. But ironically enough, in my experience, the fingerprint sensor was actually more consistent than Windows Hello facial recognition. For some reason, too many times when I wake the laptop up from sleep, I'm unable to log in using Windows Hello because the cameras are booting up or the IR sensor hasn't turned on or something like that. And so I'm usually better off just entering my PIN. Whereas with Windows Hello, the fingerprint recognition on the Surface Laptop Go, it seems to be always ready for me, and so I have no problems easily logging in. I would love to see Microsoft bake both fingerprint recognition and facial recognition into a single Surface Laptop 5 potentially, because that would be significantly more reliable for me than the IR sensor that we are used to in the Surface Laptop. Battery life is the one other thing that I think the Surface Laptop Go really falls behind on. I found that I've had to charge my Surface Laptop Go substantially more often than I did my Surface Laptop 3. Now, neither of these are really battery champs, but the Surface Laptop 3 could really easily work at least through a normal workday and not have to charge. Whereas the Surface Laptop Go, it feels like after I've been using it for 4, 5, or 6 hours, it frequently needs to juice up. And my biggest issue with that is specifically the fact that when you are charging this device, it's basically guaranteed that the fan will turn on, which is just unfortunate. Let's get to the bottom line. Despite having both of these laptops sitting in my house for the last several months, and despite the Surface Laptop 3 having the bigger screen and usually being better, I've actually picked up the Surface Laptop Go more often. Something about the portability and compactness makes me want to grab this off the shelf a lot more often. I love just how tiny it is, how easy it is to slip into any bag, and how easy it is to go. I love that. And I wish that the Surface Laptop 3 really did the same thing, or offered a substantially larger screen size to make up for the difference. After upgrading my Surface Laptop Go's 64 gig eMMC storage to 256 gig SSD, it was actually substantially faster in terms of read and write speeds than even the Surface Laptop 3. Now, of course, I could also upgrade the Surface Laptop 3's storage if I so chose, but it's nice to be able to easily close that gap. So I actually still have the base model here with 256 gig upgraded storage. And even with the reduced 4 gigs versus 8 gigs of RAM, the performance between the two was actually kind of comparable. Now, I wouldn't venture to try and edit photos or do any like higher level work on this machine, but for a super portable web browsing machine with a little bit of capability to do stuff like Office and emails and some additional stuff with the 10th Gen Core i5, the Surface Laptop Go was actually the more attractive option for me. Now, if I flip the question around and ask, should you pay an additional $150 for a better screen, better battery life, potentially better cooling, and a significantly more premium design, well, then it becomes a little bit tougher. Generally, I would say go with the Surface Laptop 3. But that $150 actually becomes substantially more when, like me, you go for the base model Surface Laptop Go, which starts at $550, and then upgrade the storage to something like a 256 gig SSD for $30 or $40. That means that you're getting this device for nearly $200 cheaper with a better SSD, which is pretty compelling. Of course, you're only getting 4 gigs of RAM, but if you don't plan on doing those more complicated things, 4 gigs of RAM might be okay. I was very surprised at how well it operated on this machine. This comparison becomes a little bit more difficult when it comes to the Surface Laptop 4, which comes with Intel 11th gen processors or AMD 4th gen processors. Those two are probably substantially more capable than the 10th generation that you got on the Surface Laptop Go. But of course, you're going to be paying several $100s more for that privilege. Now, I'm waiting for the Surface Laptop Go 2 because I think that sort of capability and power of 11th gen, especially graphics, or an AMD processor in this small form factor sounds very, very compelling. So I can't wait for Microsoft to release the sequel. Until then, I think I'm going to keep the Surface Laptop Go around as my go-to portable powerhouse, and unfortunately, the Surface Laptop 3 is going to have to say goodbye. Thank you for watching InnoISO. I hope you like this video, and I hope it helps you make a decision between these two laptops or any Surface device. If you haven't already, be sure to catch my What is the Best Surface video that I released earlier this year. It might give you a better idea of what the best Surface for you is, just based on the form factor. Of course, since then, there's been more and more Surfaces released. I've released videos on the Surface Laptop 3 and Surface Laptop Go, which you should check out both of them. If you like all of this content, or any of this content, be sure to get subscribed because it really helps. And like and comment below. I'll catch you in the next one.